and welcome to part 3 of building my new diorama. Since the last video you can see basically I've been working on the interior of the building, trying to give it a dusty, ruined, abandoned look. The idea that the building's been empty for quite some time. As you can see, this I put the wallpaper in. The difference between these two rooms, this one I've left for now. This hasn't really been weathered too much. It's got some rubble in the bottom. The wallpaper's been ripped, but apart from that it still looks pretty clean. This one has been worked on. It's been given a lot of oil washes on the walls. I'll show you in a moment what I use for that. The floor has been given a more of a dusty look. The brickwork and all the planks of wood have been covered. So once the wallpaper has been added and the paint is dry, I can start adding some oil washes. First off, you might be able to see a little yellow rectangle here of some low-tack masking tape. The idea of that being is when the oil washes go onto the wall and they're dry, this will be removed, leaving a lighter patch underneath to simulate a picture that would have been there in the past. I'll just add a little nail into the centre there, and that'll add a bit more detail again. To make the oil washes for the rubble and for the walls, firstly I used some quite diluted raw umber oil paint and just gave everything a general wash, and then for the more denser, deeper colours I added it straight from the tube onto the walls, and then added a tiny bit of white spirit just to break that down, but to make it some more denser, darker colours. For the orange, it's a little bit discoloration again on the walls here. I used burnt sienna in exactly the same way, just to give it a bit more colour interest. For the green, to give it a mouldy, mildewy look on the walls, I used Slimy Grime Dark from AK, direct from the bottle, and that gives it a really nice effect. And for onto the woods, I used AK's Enamel Wash for Wood, again just to give it some discoloration. You might be able to pick out little bits here on the walls where it's a little bit shiny, and for that I used AK's Wet Effect Fluid straight from the bottle, and then once that's dried it gives it a bit of a glossy finish to simulate some dampness, which looks really nice. New product I used here for the rubble. The rubble, once it was oil washed, it was given a dusting of pink plaster that I'd used from the bricks that was left over, and then to finally give it a final finish I used MIG's Pigments Rubble, and that went straight directly from the bottle and brushed it onto all the areas of the rubble. This is the only side so far that's been done in that way, but it gives it a really nice dusty look. This rubble will be added to the top floor, the windowsills, the walls, and obviously this room once it's all finished, to give it a much dustier look. Originally on the inside here I wasn't really going to add any more detail once all the rubble was done, but I've had an idea for this area here, which I'll come back to later on in the video, which should hopefully look pretty nice. So I've just had a few new deliveries today, just thought I'd share them before I start opening them up and putting them together. Firstly, the Simca 5 staff car from Tamaya. This was quite a small vehicle, but it was perfect for what I wanted. Since the diorama is going to be filled with refugees and a cart, I just wanted a small little car, and this one is perfect. Comes with the normal instruction sheets and information. 2 sprues, which is great. It won't take hopefully too long to put together. Comes also with a driver, which I won't be using because this car, the idea is supposed to be abandoned, maybe run out of fuel or broken down. The Simca was originally an early war car vehicle used by the German army and civilians. There wouldn't have been too many around in 45 perhaps, but it fits perfectly for what I need it for. The roof would be covered in like a canvas top, which I'll make from scratch and put a few holes in. I'll also dent some of the bodywork since it's going to be abandoned, and the idea is that it'll fit around about there on the model, just in that space perfect, and that should look pretty nice. I've had 7 new figure sets down, just arrived. So the first one we'll look at is Stalingrad's European Refugee Man. The good thing about the Stalingrad figures is that there's not a lot of parts to put together. Most of them already have just the arms to attach, the head and the baggage, for example, on this guy. But generally everything else, the kit is already made up. You don't have to attach legs, things like that. That's the Stalingrad guy. Next one is Stalingrad's Refugee Russian Children. Again, very similar sort of thing. This is a set of 2 figures, and again the little boy and the little girl are pretty much already made. They just have some in the pack here. They got some hands to attach and a little bowl for food, and that's it. They're already made up, as you can see, so there's not a lot of putting together for those guys. Next in the box is Stalingrad's German AVF Crewman Ukraine. The idea of this dio, as I've probably mentioned before, is it's the end of the war, February 45, so there'll be a lot of different units, so I don't mind mixing and matching some of my Germans with infantrymen and crewmen and different ranks, so to speak. This guy, his place will be here. That's the idea where he'll be sitting. Again, already made up, just the arms to attach and the head. Great little detail. The fantastic thing about Stalingrad figures is the detail on them is so good. It's so crisp, and they're a joy to paint. Really nice to put together and to paint. So they're a good purchase. And his friend will be again Stalingrad's German AVF crewman, again from Ukraine 44. And once again, pretty much made already. Just the hands to add with a bottle of wine, which will go well with the scene that I'm creating. There's a bit of wine flowing in this one. The detail in the head is pretty close to Hornet heads in terms of detail and crispness. Next thing is a new purchase for me. Normally my figures, I normally paint the faces with oil paints. I've done that for a long time. But I've seen a few of these kits advertised on online, so I thought I would try this out. There's different companies who make them. This one is MIG. I think AK Interactive do one as well, and there's a couple of others. And it's basically the flesh tone set that come with six different paints to create some really nice looking faces on the figures. Like I say, I've never used them before. Unfortunately on this, there's no real instructions on here. There's nothing in the box, apart from the few photographs at the back, to really give you any indication of how to, especially if you're starting pretty new, how to paint them. But there's quite a few online tutorial stuff on YouTube and various different websites and forums which will give you some indication of how to put them together. Normally the luxury I find with oil paints is that you can blend them so easily, because the paints on the figures can take well over 24 hours to dry. But like I say, I haven't given these a go before, but I'll give them a bash, see how I get on, and maybe I'll go back to oil paints, or if I'm happy with these, hopefully it'll give me a good step. Next one isn't Stalingrad. This was an MK35. MK35 is a French company which I use quite a lot, and their figures, especially their civilians, they do some great civilian figures. This guy is from a railway scene. His name is Simon, I think, F262. But because he was smiling, it comes with 2 heads, which is pretty good. Two different expressions. As you can see, one is smiling and one is looks a bit rougher, but the detail and the character on the faces is fantastic. And so because he's carrying a bag, as you can see on the picture, you have his bag here, and again, similar to Stalingrad figures, he's already pretty made up. Everything on the legs, the shoes, the coats, the clothing, all you need to add is just a couple of arms, his bag and one head, and he's done. But he's a great character, and that should add to the scene quite nicely. Last couple of figures, back to Stalingrad. This is a German infantryman at rest. I think it's part of a 6 or 7 or 8 figure set that they have. This was a later idea that I had for the model. The idea for the rear of the building was there wasn't going to be any really much going on, no figures or anything included. But then I saw this guy and I thought he would look quite good. Again, everything's already on the figure. The ammunition pouches, the whole of his gear are on his back already. There's nothing really to add, although they do include a small piece which has got the water bottle, food canister and the spade. And then apart from that, he just has his arm, his helmet, his gun, and another great head with an expression. And that's going to go in the back room behind the rest of these guys who are going to be drinking and enjoying themselves. And the idea of this one is that he's had a bit too much to drink, a bit worse for wear, and he'll be in the back sleeping it off. So that just add a little bit of detail to the model and give some interest to those back rooms. And finally, more refugees. Refugee with baby carriage from Stalingrad. This is quite a bigger set. This is a 2-figure set. With a mother and daughter, again all pretty much made up, just with heads and arms to add really. Nice expression on the figures, and they'll be pushing, as you can see, a pram that's already got some of the luggage and possessions in it already. So that'll look quite nice on the scene once that's put together. What I will do, the idea is before I do paint them and before I do mount them onto a little piece of wood to help with the painting, I'll once they're all made up, I'll put them on the scene roughly where they're going to go, and you might get a better idea of how the scene will be laid out. Okay, so I was just applying some washes with some oil paints and white spirit to the pavements, and I thought for the last section I'd just show you how I go about applying the washes. This is the way I would normally do the bricks on the building, and the pavement and the road as well will all receive this treatment. Firstly, I use some raw umber and just brush that generally onto one section at a time, as in this one is the last section of pavement. Really diluted, very diluted raw umber mixed with white spirit, and firstly that just covers the pavement itself. I use this procedure as well with the rubble to give it a little bit of shadow as well. So that's the first application, quite thinned, and picking out little bits of detail that's already on the base itself. Then I go with a little bit more undiluted and just pick out some more of the detail. You can see the little cobblestones there, the sides of the pavement. And then right now with a separate brush and using AK's Slimy Grime, straight from the bottle, to give it a little bit of moss effect. Just go along, and because the pavement is so wet, with the white spirit, the slimy grime just runs into all the little nooks and spreads itself quite nicely. And once you've done that and you're pretty happy with roughly the location and where everything is, you can then, with another brush dipped into some almost pure white spirit, and just dip that on, and that'll spread it even more so, to dilute it and to give it a little bit of a nice. So that's that pretty much for now. I'm pretty happy with that. And then you just leave that to dry for half an hour or so. It dries pretty quickly, and then what you're left with is a much more subtle colour on the pavement. And then anything you're not happy with, all you need to do is just go over with some clean white spirit, and you can retouch it up, take it off, start again. It's pretty versatile like that. Okay, so that's about it for part 3. The car is attached to the top now, it's glued on. Once all this scenery and the groundwork is all pretty much completed, I'll be able to glue the base to the top part, and then I can start working on some of the holes. There's about 12 figures that are now almost or partially completed in the painting. At the back, as you can see, the only figure that I have added now is the sleeping German at the back. I'll get some of Miniart's crates of beer, wine rather, that his friends will be drinking at the front, and there'll be a few empty bottles around him just to show that he's sleeping it off. A huge thanks to everyone who's liked, commented and subscribed on the videos, and shortly I'll be working on part 4, where I'll be working on the park, the sidewall detail, the fence and the tree in the top right hand corner, Miniart's carts that will be added to the refugee column with all their baggage and belongings on, some homemade water slide decals which will include some posters, notices and some advertisements to add, and of course a load more figures including items from Verlinden, MK35 and Stalingrad.